All right, well, hi everyone. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. And our team of experts, Mariann, Louis, Darin, and myself are always here to answer all your questions and as well as provide clarity on what is going on with the housing market overall. And today we decided, we thought it was a great idea to analyze the year of 2022. And most importantly, we will discuss the forecast for 2023 and what to expect from the upcoming year and provide some guidance and maybe we'll share some tips on how to prepare yourself better for the upcoming year. So talking about 2022, just wanted to mention a couple of things, probably like from my end. Many predicted this year to be worse than 2021 in terms of the housing prices and the transactions overall. And many predicted the additional price growth of 9 to 10%, which we all know did not happen. And instead, the home sales have declined for about 9 months straight, driven by the surging mortgage rates. So those that suffered the most tend to be the single family homes that have a higher price tag rather than the condo market, which held up pretty good. So those who are watching us for the first time, Mariann is our absolutely amazing real estate lawyer. And I wanted to ask you a question in terms of what you have seen in terms of the transactions and how did you anticipate they would go this year versus, you know, what you've seen, and maybe based on that, give us a few tips on what to watch out for in the next year from your standpoint.
Sure. So as you probably imagine, what we all anticipated happening following 2021 was that we would have another year that was filled from January to December of high volume transactions, firm deals, very few conditions inserted in the offers. And maybe that was the case in, the first quarter or so. But as the Bank of Canada sort of stepped in, we found that started to taper off. So there were a lot less firm deals. There were more conditions that started to crop up. And these were outside of the typical financing conditions, status review of status certificate, inspection clauses. There were more creative ones. So conditional upon the sale of the purchaser's home, conditional upon different factors. So we were seeing a lot more of the creativity getting in there. And that was sort of what started and sort of just kept going strong throughout the rest of the year. Other than that, for the most part, I would say, every once in a while you have a deal that sort of falls through, or you have someone where they request an extension. That was less of the case at the beginning of the year. But as you can imagine, as time progressed, as valuations dropped, appraisals dropped, things like that, people didn't qualify as readily as they were before. We were getting more of an influx of requests for extensions. Sometimes people would unfortunately have to walk away from the deal or their deposit because it was just not feasible for them anymore, or they were really stuck. They couldn't sell their property. So that unfortunately started to happen a bit, again, not super frequently, but a lot more than we would have seen if we were having that hot seller's market. We were noticing a lot more shorter closings. And I think that the idea behind that was to sort of prevent the value of the property dropping too significantly, perhaps between the time that the agreement was signed and the time of closing. So that way they could secure their mortgage financing. And other than that, to sort of make sure that they could capture their interest rate before something were to change. As for next year, I think that will be most likely dependent on what the Bank of Canada really does. If they have sort of stopped the rate of increases, then people might have more of a faith, I guess, in the market again. There might be more stability. You might see more increased volume of transactions. Most likely, my guess would be in the spring market. You would probably know better, but that's probably what may continue. I would probably say the continuation of the conditional offers is always great, whether it's a buyer's market, seller's market, balanced market. You should always, you should really try to always put in a conditional offer, because you never know, if you don't put in your conditional on financing, inspection, things like that, you really open yourself up to a lot of unfortunate possibilities, and you really don't want to put yourself in that situation. Even if you really love the place, it's better to be safe than sorry. So that's always my recommendation.
Yeah, that's perfect. And quick question, did you see a lot of transactions that actually fell through, especially in like a second half of the year? Or
I would say not a lot, but more than the beginning of the year. Very few. I know that I have some colleagues that have also experienced similar situations. Most of them, if anything, were extensions, and then someone would either find an alternative financing. Sometimes they would have to ask other family members to loan them the money or give them the additional difference that they were short. But very few we saw walk away, less than 5 that we had to deal with, and that was on when we were selling. It's unfortunate. It happens whatever the market is. Sometimes things just don't work out, but we definitely saw a little bit more than we did in the beginning of the year.
Right. Yeah, you gotta close no matter what, right? We all know that, because it's gonna cost you a lot more if you don't close.
But yeah, you have to really weigh your options, right? In certain circumstances, you may be better off to close. In certain circumstances, you may be better off to walk away. It obviously depends on what's going on, and you just have to analyze each situation as it presents itself.
Right, yeah, every case is different. All right, and talking about the mortgage rates, so Louis, our mortgage broker, you do have access to a lot of lenders out there, and I'm curious to know if they have maybe shared with you some of their predictions in terms of the rate targets for 2023, maybe even 2024, and how the next year is going to look like for the homeowners, and how the rate hikes, if they continue, obviously will affect them. I think that's the question that everybody is interested to hear the answer to.
Yeah, I think everyone's looking for that crystal ball, trying to see when we're gonna see the light at the end of the tunnel. We get forecasts every year from all at least the big banks, so your BMOs, your TDs, your RBCs, as to what their economists are predicting will happen in the next year. Some of them even give a 2-year prediction, and we'll obviously. I've already posted this on the Facebook group, but I guess I'll have a link to the actual forecast below, so those of you who are following along can also visualize this as well. But basically, everyone's year-end 2020 target pretty much was bang on. So the overnight rate is pretty much going to finish at 4.25%, which is what the latest rate hike last week did. That 50 basis point increase last week brought it up to 4.25%, which is what everyone's year-end target was. What we're seeing for a year-end target for 2023 is pretty plateaued across the board. It's a good sign. It's a good sign in the sense that all the economists for all these big banks are basically not forecasting any more increases. Right? So this past year has been, 8 rate hikes in a row we've had now. So it's a nice change to be able to come into the new year and hopefully be like, that's it, right? So hopefully we'll see rates sort of plateau. Obviously this is just predictions, right? Anything can happen. It's really based on our last call. You guys know that this is all based on inflation. So inflation still is running rampant next year. Obviously, probably more action is going to be taken into account to try to control it. But given the way inflation is right now, hopefully we won't have to see any more rate increases, right? So what does that mean for buyers? We're probably going to have to, at least for the first, I would say 1 or 2 quarters of next year, we'd probably be seeing the exact same thing that we're seeing now, right? I call this sort of like Boxing Day right now. Like, we always have clients that are obviously very rate sensitive and always say, Lewis, the rates are too high. Like, there's no way I'm going to get into the market where rates are almost at 6% in some cases with the big banks, right? When I tell people is, guys, like, if you compare this to January this year, like, it's pretty much Black Friday sale right now for housing, right? Obviously it depends on the segment, but I'm being very general, but houses right now are been steadily decreasing across the board. So those of you who can still afford a house with the rates the way they are, I always encourage you to obviously look at your finances and your budget to make sure it still fits. But if you can pick up a home right now that's 100, depending on the market, maybe even 200,000 less than it was in January, and maybe end up having to pay only 50,000 more of interest over the course of 5 years, that's a win, right? Target rate for 2024 has also been released. Now, obviously, this is a little bit more inaccurate because it's still quite a long ways, but we're seeing 2024 rate target for Bank of Canada drop to around the 3% range across the board. So what that means is by the end of the 2024 year, which is 2 years away, we're going to start to see, hopefully, interest rates start to decline again, at least variable rates, right? So that's when we're going to finally, everyone's always asking, when's rates going to start to drop? Probably in the 2024 year is where we're going to start to see rates start to drop. Fingers crossed, we have some good news in the horizon. I recommend all those people that are, on the fence to, continue to search for houses right now, because what we don't want is for all of our clients that are on the fence to wait until the bottom hits. And then everyone all of a sudden hops off at the same time. And guess what? You and I are in January 2022 all over again with multiple offer situations. So, and going back to what Mariann was saying, if we get into a situation like that, we won't be able to protect ourselves again, because those conditions that we're putting back in to protect ourselves are going to be long gone. We won't be able to put those in a situation where 30 people are bidding on the same house, right? So,
Darin, I know you're in charge of the home inspections, obviously, and based on that, wanted to ask you, maybe you can share with us some of the home maintenance tips. I think it's very important because obviously the temperature is dropping, and we need to continue maintaining our homes according to each season, right? So what would be, I would say, like main things every single owner must do to ensure they're fully prepared for the upcoming winter month?
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. Yeah. And our winter maintenance checklist is posted on our group as well, so anybody can access it. And there's other things. I mean, there's so many things depending on what's most important and what people want to do and so on. So I'll just touch on some main things. If you haven't done so already, make sure that exterior hose bib is shut off for the season. You don't want that freezing and the water, left in that outside area of the pipe, of the copper pipe, freezing, cracking the pipe, creating leaks or whatnot. So, on the inside, if you follow the pipe inside your house, in the ceiling, there should be a shut off. If it's a finished basement, a lot of times there should be an access panel that you should be able to open, and it should be in there right around the exterior of the house. So make sure that's shut off for sure. Another big one is smoke detectors. Every season, test your smoke detectors, clean them, depending where they're located. I always preach on this. Every season, at least test them. Make sure they're working, operated. A lot of newer construction, they are wired into your electrical system, which is nice, but they do have a backup battery as well. But you still want to test them. Every 10 years, you want to change them and make sure it's working, because the last thing you want is that not to be working. So, and there's, there should be at least one on every floor. Another big one for the winter is your filters. So furnace filters. Every 3 months you should be changing them, but even in the winter time, because your furnace is running more frequently during the winter, you probably even want to check it monthly. Make sure it's clean. Specifically, if you have pets. If you have pets, that return air is bringing all that air right through into the filter, and that will clog it. So you want to check it out. It should be white. So if it's not white and it's dark, and it's brown, if it's that dark color, change it, put a new one in. You can buy 3 packs at Home Depot for inexpensive. But you definitely want to make sure if you have a humidifier. The humidifier you run in the wintertime only, very dry, that the furnace air heat is very dry, so that adds a little bit of moisture. You don't want too much moisture, in around 30 to 40%. Humidifiers will have like a dial, a gauge on there, so you want to be in around the 30-40%. You want too much moisture, then you got too much moisture building up or your windows or whatever. But that's got a filter as well that you clean, so you want to make sure that doesn't corrode and because that could create leaks and get destroyed. So HRVs, a lot of new homes have heat recovery ventilators. Houses are built pretty airtight nowadays, so they have heat recovery ventilators that help move the outdoor air with the indoor air. But again, anytime you do that, you got condensation and you got filters. So you got to make sure you keep those clean as well. So that's very important. Another thing that I even do is checking for drafts, window drafts. So there's different ways you can do this. You can do, if you have a little smoke tool, a match or something like that, if you kind of go around your windows and hold it up, if you got a draft, you're going to move the flame, right? It's a little way that you can kind of go around and check. Now, because it's cold out, you may not be able to fix it because it's a little bit, caulking doesn't, if you need to recaulk your windows because of the draft, it doesn't do well in the wintertime. But at least you can, okay, I got to do it, just make it a springtime project. So at least for the next year, you can help cover up all those drafts. Because if you're an older house, older windows are not as thermal energy efficient, right? So they will, create a bit more drafts as well. Another one I want to touch on is the attic. I know not everybody likes to get up into the attic, but we're in the wintertime, so we'll talk about this for a minute. So, attics have to be well insulated, right? Now they use blown-in insulation. You don't use, bat insulation is the type that goes into the walls, right? They come in sheets like that. You kind of put them in between the 2x4s. You don't want to use that in the attic because they still leave voids. Blown-in insulation or loose fill insulation creates a full bed over everything, so you can't see the joists in the attic. It covers everything. So and it's got to be fluffy because insulation is meant to hug the warm air and hold it. It's not a wall, right? It's not meant to block it, but it more absorbs it. In the wintertime, a common thing is attic frost. And attic frost is usually with minimal insulation or compromised insulation in your attic, meaning if an insulation gets compressed or gets moved around, now you got voids and you've got compressed insulation, which is not working the way it should. It's not holding the correct R value is what they call it. And that warm air will still find its way in. And that warm air gets into your attic and hits that cold sheathing, which is the plywood or OSB board, whatever they use on the attic, on the structure, is going to create attic frost. Warm, cold, creates attic frost. And that's going to melt eventually, and that's going to create moisture problems. And as it happens over and over again, that's what creates moisture issues and could be future mold problems in your attic. So you want to make sure you get up there. If you're going to get up there, at least get up there once a year in the wintertime. Make sure, because the other thing that I've actually noticed quite a bit is when people do construction and they do renovations and they're putting lighting up in their ceilings. Contractors get up there. Well, they got to get up there and work, so they're moving insulation out of the way. They're using plywood to go up there. They're compressing it, and they don't put it back properly. Now you've got insulation. You've got voids. I've been up there where they recently put pot lights up there and they didn't put the insulation back. You've got areas that are open and not even insulated, right? Because they didn't put it back to where it's supposed to go. So you've got all this warm air just escaping up there. So, but you want to make sure obviously your roof isn't leaking, because during the winter time you got all that snow sitting on your roof as well. So you want to get up there at least once a year. I know nobody likes to go up there, but just get the ladder, poke your head up there and make sure. Because the other thing I'll tell you on the outside that you can notice, if you have insulation issues is, if it's snowed and it's wintertime and everyone's got snow on the roof and you don't have snow on your roof, chances are you've got a problem there where heat's getting up and it's melting the snow. So here's what happens in that problem. So when that happens, now you're melting the snow, and that water is rolling off down to the roof edge where it's cold and it's refreezing. And as that keeps happening, now you're building what's called ice dams around your roof edge. Water gets underneath the shingles and can cause moisture problems right under the roof structure. So it's amazing how, insulation is big. So, once it's good, it shouldn't, once you go up there and check it, it should be good. But if you had work done in the house, you want to go just double check and make sure that insulation was put back properly so you don't create those type of problems. So, I think those are kind of the main things I want to just touch on, winter related. I do, in the group, I will post one every season. So as we get into spring, summer and fall, there'll be some new ones posted, and then our guests can get it whenever they want.
Perfect. Yeah, those are such valuable points. Definitely. You don't even think about certain things, but they're all connected.
Yeah.
The result can just a snowball, right? Like into really 100%. Serious issues. That's great tips. Thank you so much for that.
No, I was going to say that Darin is making me think now about stuff that I have to do later today.
That's the whole point.
Welcome.
Darin, do you want to come in my attic?
Absolutely. No problem. No problem.
Great. Well, thank you so much, guys, for today. It was fun as always. I really appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, bye, guys.
Have a good holidays, everyone.
Yes. Merry Christmas.
Okay. Yes.
Merry Christmas.
Okay, bye, guys.